Ah, bridge scene. My favorite discarded idea. It's always a pleasure to talk about it. There's not much content in the project. We only have 2 rooms to explore. This one was clearly made for testing purposes, while the other is the one with content. This is the room that some of you have already seen in GIFs and such. It's the area in which the game will mainly take place. Let's start by checking room 0. As always, the game's window is too small. Let's fix that. Much better. I can't remember the purpose of this room. Maybe I just wanted to try out the wooden fence. As for this arm, we'll talk about it in the next room. Player movement is just like in Discomfort. That game would come out only 3 years later, but I was already interested in first-person tech movement. Okay, let's get dangerous. Let's check the cottage. Bridge Scene was a game that aimed to scare the player via paranoia. The protagonist will be assisting Penelope, a paraplegic botanist which lived alone in her family's cottage. In exchange for their services, they will be granted with room and board. Taking care of the field, cleaning, cooking. The player will be tasked with things like this. Fulfilling these tasks will strengthen the relationship with Penelope. While I talk about gameplay stuff, let's take a look on the outside. Have you seen that wristwatch a moment ago? Time would have been an important part of the gameplay. The story will be taking place in June, for a total of 30 playable days. The player will be playing through each day in their entirety. They could decide on how to spend their time, although movements and actions will be pushing forward the hands of the clock. And, as I've told before, time would have been important. Each day, escorted by an anonymous individual, Penelope would leave the house in the morning, only to get back in time for lunch or dinner. This would have left the player alone, with the cottage at their disposal. Will you stick to your duties, or will you check on that mysterious trapdoor? What if Penelope comes home early? How will you explain you snooping around? How will she react? That's the kind of game I wanted to make. As some of you may already know, this place does exist in real life. This cottage was built by my grandfathers. It's kind of their legacy, gifted to us nephews. It's an old house and we're trying to get it back in shape. It's not an easy task though, sea separates us from it. So we cannot visit very often. These walls are filled with childhood memories. So nostalgic. I've always liked these doors. They close by themselves whenever you're far enough. I'm talking about the in-game doors, of course. See? Kinda eerie. I like it. The music you're hearing is Gymnopedy No. 1, composed by Eric Satie and covered by Miu. It's the melody that made me think about Bridge Scene in the first place, back in 2016. I thought you could open this gate. You could, like, drag it. Oh well, let's check the second floor. Second floor consists of 2 stories. The player will be living in one of these. The cottage's 3D model was not done. For example, it's missing a metal spiral staircase that leads to an unfinished 3rd floor. The game I envisioned years ago would have seen this specific apartment being the one you would have lived in. This one would have been your room. If you woke up early and looked out the window, you would have seen Penelope getting in a car and leaving the place. If I were to make the game nowadays, though, I will probably pick the other apartment for you to live in. There would have been certain events aimed to ramp up your anxiety and curiosity. Like, you could wake up in the middle of the night just to hear footsteps above your head. How is that? Penelope is bound to her wheelchair, and the 3rd floor is abandoned and unsafe. Losing sleep to check on stuff like this would result in less rest and waking up late the next day. On top of that, as a guest, you'd be prohibited from visiting the 3rd floor. You see where I'm getting at? You had a lot of options that would have changed the game dynamics and discoveries. This map was made based on memories. If I ever were to pick up Bridge Scene again, I wouldn't be making the map by memory. I took a lot of photos this time. References, textures, uncovered. This small room ends our exploration. While we stroll around, let's talk about another gameplay aspect. Cooking lunch and dinner for Penelope would unlock unique conversation with her. In these lunch sections, you will be sitting in the 1st floor's veranda with her, eating your delicacies. Getting more intimate with Penelope will get her to talk about her condition, or why she lives alone. She will talk about the mysterious individual that comes to get her every morning. She will talk about the bridge. You know, in a game story, this cottage would have been isolated from the city. Some years before the in-game events, works for a bridge that connected this area to the main city were started. As it often happens in Italy, though, this project was soon abandoned, leaving behind what we call an ecomostro, an half-built architectural project, left as it is because of money and politics. For some reason, Penelope is obsessed with this bridge. Okay, time to see if there's anything else interesting in the project. Here's a list of all the models loaded in it. Time to check on this. Here's Penelope in all her awful 3D model glory. These were my first attempts at making 3D people. I'm still awful at making 3D models, but these were made without any logic in mind. Nice wheelchair though. Player template, I presume? I'm pretty sure I haven't made this. Looks too thought out. The head, specifically. And here's our girl again. Even then, I thought these were poorly made. That's why I tried remaking characters in the style of Calm Time before ditching the project. Protagonist's arm and wristwatch. Making the entire map on Model Creator was a hard task, but a fun one nonetheless. I like working on this program. Blender is great, but there is a certain charm in the slow workflow of Model Creator. Do we have more interesting models to check upon? Guess not. But for real, I'm pretty sure that the main gate could be dragged in-game. I knew it. Then how do we trigger it? Yes! It also looks like this metal fella can go a long way. I'll let you all find out how to interact with the nefarious gate by yourselves. And I'm afraid there's not much else to see. I thought about spoiling how the story would unfold, but certain things are better left untold. You know, the future might hold surprises. I'd love for one day to be able to check on that wristwatch, see that it's time for sunset to come, murmur to myself, "Where's Penelope? It's late," and then leave the cottage in search for her. Let's just hope that the main protagonist will not wear a Minecraft texture by then. Well, hope you enjoyed the ride. Thanks to you all.